Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of MGR Unplugged. We are loaded today, really loaded. Last week's episode was very argumentative between David and I.
Well, it was argumentative, but I mean, in the end, I was right. Clearly.
No. Okay.
We're not going to rehash.
No. There's nothing to rehash. You were not right. And according to the feedback that we got, some people, there were a minority of people.
People agreed with me.
Yeah, that people agree with you. The alive people agree with me. So you need to reply to
and in the
people.
time since the last episode, there's been 16,000 new cases outside of China.
Not to mention about 20,000 new recovered cases. And
but
we are still
all of
alive.
which were in China.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Anyways, it was actually a good episode. We had a lot of arguments and discussions. We're still going through it, but we're not going to repeat it now. So we do have a few. This week, actually, I wanted to comment more on our topic, which is more economic implications of situations like this. You can name it coronavirus. You can name it, whatever, any kind of crisis that happens that all of a sudden jolts everything in our lives. What happens? How can we prevent it?
Some might even call it a black swan.
Yeah, the black swan, whatever. Anyways, we have a lot of things going on, so let's get started and roll music.
None of you people can tell me to stop. Lower the lights down. Hand over my crown. Hand over my heart. I do this for my town. I do this for my crowd. So turn me up real loud. My time, my time. None of you people can tell me to stop.
All right, welcome back, guys. Let's get started right away with our episode for today.
You know, one person who made a lot of money this month or February.
A lot of people made a lot of money. All the sure.
Nassim Taleb's hedge fund.
Yeah.
There was an article in the Wall Street Journal.
Explain who he is first for people that don't know.
Nassim Taleb is the guy who popularized the idea of the black swan in finance. He wrote the book, The Black Swan and Anti-Fragile, and a bunch of books. But yeah, his hedge fund, there was a piece in the Wall Street Journal this week that said, they didn't officially say how much it was up, but they said that there were estimates that they were up like 200%.
Yeah, but that's the kind
month.
of thing where he's also up for these 2 weeks, but he's been down for the entire 2 years.
No, but they were comparing the hedge fund's return over the last 5 years to the S&P and how it consistently outperformed.
Yeah, when you bet on catastrophes and stuff, eventually you're going to be right, but luckily 9 out of 10 times you are not right. So anyways, it's hedging. That's
but
what
it's
they call
about the
funds.
asymmetric returns.
Right. We'll get into this later on because we can see the market has been crazy. This is refreshing. This is actually a live chart right now for the S&P 500. The market, if anybody is looking at it, is been like crazy in the last basically 5 days. We actually did mention a while ago that we were surprised that this
I said it was crazy. Basically, right here, I was saying it's kind of crazy the market isn't going down because Apple had already issued guidance of this is going to be a big deal.
Yeah, it was in denial, but then it went down about 10% and it was panicking. Then it went up another 5% from the down 10%. And since then, it's been for the last 3-4 days, it's been swinging up and down 5% like crazy, like up to 100 points, down 800, back another 1,200. Today's down again another 1,000. So, which, by the way, one of the reasons why today is down too is because California declared state of emergency, which California has been in a state of emergency forever for a variety of reasons. This is very convenient for them, by the way.
Italy also announced yesterday that they're shutting down all schools and they're shutting down all like sporting events. So they'll still take place, but the stadiums are going to be empty. And that was something I was wondering if it was going to happen here. And I actually think it might. The NBA already issued a warning to players saying don't give autographs and shake hands with fans and basically interact with fans. Stay safe, which is obviously not something they probably want to do, but you have to take precautions.
It's important. Everybody's taking measures because the one thing that we know about the coronavirus is that it spreads very, very easily. We also have learned, if that is true, that it's not so lethal as other diseases that we compare or illnesses that we compare it with. But at least we know that it spreads very easily through contact, droplets, air that we breathe in proximity with another person that might be infected and so forth. So yeah, it's normal. I mean, there's a lot of precautionary things that are being taking place. Europe is now really jumping on it. Italy, obviously, is the hardest hit country as far as cases and deaths. It's disproportional how many people have died.
Yeah, their death rate so far has been really bad,
Right, like-
especially for a
civilized.
supposedly modernized healthcare country like
Italy
Italy.
is supposed to be the 8th, 9th, or 7th.
I mean, their death rate
largest
so
economy.
far has been like 20-something%. I mean, it's been
right.
really bad.
Compared to similar European countries, whether it's England or the UK, Germany, France, Spain, and other countries that have like either 0, 1, 2, 3 deaths total. Italy has like 400 something. Is really crazy, but. Yes, it's affecting a lot of things, and a lot of European companies and entities are starting to make these decisions, like sporting events, like you said, like even the European Champions League, which is like almost like a mini playoff Super Bowl in soccer in Europe. They're gonna play games with no spectators, which is kind of crazy. It's basically a stadium that can hold 80,000 people, completely empty. Only players and coaches gonna be there. So totally. Crazy. The schools are closed, and then even larger corporations are starting to split their teams to trying to prevent major blackout type thing. So if you have teams of salespeople or customer service and so forth, they split them into different mini teams. So if one is infected or affected by the virus or something, the other ones can still continue to work.
Now, I will say, I think actually productivity may go up because people are being told to work from home.
Yeah.
And they're going to be way more productive because they're not distracted all day at the office and in stupid meetings all day. And
there's actually positive notes, believe it or not. One of them is, like you said, a lot of people are going to discover that working from home is fantastic. You don't have to spend an hour in your car, in traffic, each way, talking to people at the office, useless conversations, water cooler conversations, going out to lunch breaks, all that stuff. So you work from home, you're safe, and you're much more efficient. Number two, one of the things that you and I were talking about the other day is we're comparing, rightly or wrong, coronavirus with the flu. But because right now everybody knows that one of the ways to
you were.
Well, okay.
I wasn't.
We were together. But
yeah.
One of the good positive sides is that, and I said this before even learning anything, I was just actually working out and thought, all these people are like now being super cautious about washing their hands and sanitizers and avoiding contact with people and being much more conscious about contagious type things. Now, what happens is that there are far fewer cases of flu in countries. This is also flu season, and we have fewer people now with the flu just because they're taking care of that.
I mentioned to you that in Hong Kong, because they're on total shutdown, that the cases they were looking at, I think, 3 different flu strains, and they said that all of them, like there was a chart,
right.
and it totally had dropped because
right.
basically people were being much more hygienic, and the city was shut down, so people weren't spreading it to each other. Now, obviously, overall, it's still a net negative because you don't want cities shut down for the flu,
right.
but there are some positive side effects.
Right. So that's good. But there's obviously a lot of economic repercussions that we may not even think about. I mean, I just read yesterday that even movie releases that we've been seeing over the holidays, that they are advertising for the summer and all that, like the latest James Bond movie and some others that were supposed to be released in April, May, and into the summer season. Now they've been delayed because people are a little more reluctant to go to a movie theater and be basically sitting next to a stranger that they don't know anything, and there's more germs and anything. So the production companies are starting to reshuffle the schedule, and some of the movie releases that were going to be released in the summer, now we're going to go to the fall or winter season, like Thanksgiving time for us, which actually is bumping against the movies that were originally supposed to be released in the holiday season. So this summer, apparently none of the major studios are going to release major movies because they want to make sure that and again, these movies are the ones that make a lot of money in the international box office, not just in the US, but obviously the James Bond movies make a lot of money worldwide. So when people are kind of freaking out about going to movie theaters and things like that, obviously it makes sense for them to delay the release of the movie.
Let me ask you, what do you think the real level of worry is for most people? Because obviously you read headlines and you go on Twitter or whatever, and people's voices are kind of amplified. But anecdotally, and I actually think people are not worried enough because, and at least anecdotally, because we live in Phoenix. We're based in Phoenix, and we're right outside of Tempe. And so a few days ago, I had to go to Tempe, and I was driving through, and I just was trying to like note, like, okay, let's see how many, because there was a confirmed case in Tempe. For those who don't know, the person recovered, but they're thinking, oh, this person may have spread it to other people, and we don't know. And all the restaurants were full. There were still tons of people walking in the street. No mask. I didn't see anything like that. And I was wondering, okay, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I just wonder. Clearly, these people. I mean, there were thousands of people out and about, not caring, not worrying. I just wonder, how much do you think the general public
my
worried?
feeling, and this is something actually, because I actually do talk to people that are not just in the US, but also some people in Europe. I talk to people in France, in Spain, Germany, England, and the feeling there is that yes, this is important, but they also have this mentality that only people that have some kind of poor health are going to be at risk. In other words, people that are
but when you
older,
look at what the criteria
no,
is,
I understand, but
that's a ton of people.
Yeah, it's a ton of people, but most of the people that I talk to are basically my age, mid-40s, mid-50s. They are, they think they're healthy, exercise, nutrition, whatever.
They think they're healthy, or they are healthy?
Well, they are healthy. I don't know. I mean, I don't know their details, but they are the kind of guys that, they get the flu here and there, that they recover and they move on and all that stuff. And, active people in good health overall, non-smokers,
I'll
whatever.
give you an example.
But let me finish. So the majority of people there, their mentality is like, oh yeah, it's spreading. Oh yeah, it's dangerous, whatever. But really, it's like another type of flu type thing.
But,
I know. That's what they use, and they think that they themselves are normally not at risk, or even if they were to get it, that it wouldn't be like a lethal case. Like people that have like asthma, pneumonias, pulmonary disease, respiratory problems, weak health, immune systems. Probably older people are more at risk, and that's the feeling, that the actual direct feedback that I get. But not so much you are the person that is normally active.
I think that's arrogant.
I understand. Yeah, it's the typical invincible.
Yes, I was literally going to use that word. People think they're invincible until they're not. But the criteria for at risk, if you actually look at it, is a massive list of things. If you have any type of heart condition, any type of kidney issues, liver issues, diabetes, I mean, when you add up all these things, it's like, okay, half the population's at risk.
I understand.
I mean, that's...
But the truth is also, the statistics as of now, or the people that have actually died of the disease are, as we did last time, is majority of people that have actually died, not being infected,
but even people
died.
who don't die and recover, this disease seems like it's like you go through hell even if you live.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, people have 103, 104 degree fevers for days, throwing up for days. They can't get out of bed. They're weak. They're
you're hospitalized.
Trembly. Like,
it's not something that you go to an emergency room.
This is not like, I have a cold and sniffles. No, this is like you're out for 2 weeks.
Right. You cannot just be home in bed with your thermometer taking, okay, I'm going to be out. No, you go to a hospital and you're taken care of with specific care and fluids and everything. But yes, I agree. But like I said, the mentality out there is that most people that are in
do you think
good health
that's
recover.
A dangerous mentality?
Yes. I mean, it could eventually. I mean, I'd rather be erring on the side of caution than being too arrogant.
Because one thing that many have said that I agree with is, okay, even if you think you're invincible, and maybe you are, maybe you'll get sick and it'll suck for 2 weeks and then you'll be fine. But if you have people who are at risk in your life, and then you infect them because you don't care, isn't that being incredibly selfish?
Yes. That's the other component. That if you are a person that you are by yourself and you say, okay, I'm willing to take this risk, it's no different than you say, oh, I like to go skydiving and this and that, and I like the risk in my life. But then all of a sudden you take your son with you, and then he freaks out, and then, okay, now you're risking not just your life, but your son's life too. So yes, that is a very important component. So, and it's not something that you can be isolated and saying, well, if I get it, I just shut myself down in the house. No, but normally you live in a house with other people, and then you're going to get other people infected, that maybe those people are more vulnerable than you are.
Right, and most people
or even
have to work and aren't, we have the luxury, and lots of people in tech and things like that have the luxury of where, okay, we can just work from home temporarily. It's not a big deal. But a lot of people don't have jobs where they can work from home. So if they get sick, they're out of a paycheck for weeks.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why all the schools, when a kid has a fever, they send him home. Because they'd rather just, even if it's a typical flu, the school says, hey, your son has a 99-degree fever, you need to pick him up. And then they put him on antibiotics, and then you can go back to school. I mean, there's a reason for that. They don't want the rest of the kids to get sick, because it's easy to take care of one kid rather than getting the whole 20 or 25 or 30 in a classroom or whatever sick. So that's just for normal flus, colds, whatever, So for this one, I understand. I mean, you need to be much more cautious. So that's definitely important. So, but let's go into other repercussions. Like we were talking the other day that, this crisis here, up and down. I mean, some of it could be.
I wouldn't call it crisis.
Well,
I'd call it correction.
Market reaction, I say.
Completely justified, warranted correction. And I think it will go down more. Personally, I do.
Yes, it could.
It's not investment advice.
It
but
could.
I
But the
do.
thing is that I don't think the majority of people out there, obviously, some people are not investing in the market and they don't see the big picture. They probably don't care. But
most people are. They just don't think about it because they have a 401k.
Well, yeah.
So
of course, a lot of people have.
They're not actively
They're not
trading
actively
or investing.
trading or investing, but they are obviously. If people have a 401k, that means that they have stocks that are in a huge basket of variety of foreign, national, and so forth. But the thing is that I don't think. I think we're realizing now how much the entire world, forget about the U.S., but the entire world relies on China for their products, for manufacturing.
It is, yeah.
The fact that the factories are closed now, or they closed the factories for they're already closed for 8 weeks or 10 weeks now, and a lot of small businesses, for the bigger businesses, the Apples and all that stuff, they have a lot of money and they already said that it's going to be affected, but not probably as much as the small business that depends on products that are manufactured in China, shipped to the U.S., and all of a sudden that's not happening.
Right.
So,
I mean, yeah, I think people don't have a hard time, or not a hard time, but don't always immediately think about the ripple effects. Because a perfect example is, okay, so the coronavirus happens, and then lots of small businesses can't get their products, and so they can't sell. And so then we, as an agency, even though we have no dealings with China, are directly affected because we can't advertise things if there's nothing to sell. And so then we have less money, and we, obviously, nothing's happening yet, but it's like, say there's an extreme, and this lasts for a year, and then there's layoffs all across companies, then people have less spending money. People are afraid to go out to restaurants, go to stores. These are the ripple effects that happen from something like this. I think one thing that is good, and I think I mentioned this actually last week, that will come of this is that the world will be much less reliant in the future on China for manufacturing. That we will become less fragile. We'll become more anti-fragile to one basic specific point that of failure in this global supply chain.
Yeah, exactly. I think this is indirectly going to help make America great again. And this is not a political statement, but it's more a reality of basically making American companies think twice before putting all their manufacturing eggs into one China basket, so to speak.
But do you think that this will make companies manufacture here?
No,
or that they
diversify.
Will just go to Africa instead of China?
Well, no, but it's going to make them think more of a contingency plan, because what we realize,
I do agree with that.
What we realize is that most of the companies that are now in jeopardy, and we know some that we work with, are actually don't have a contingency plan. They say, oh, everything is in China, or even if it's one component that is critical for their product, without that component, you can create your product. So you need to have a plan where you say, okay, yes, I prefer to manufacture in China because it's cheaper, whatever. But I also have a plan to have another company in Mexico or in India or in this, or maybe if it's not in the US. Yeah, obviously in the US, but the US always has more expensive labor, even though there's nothing more expensive than not having a product to sell. But it's going to make basically people have a plan that is not just China, and it's not going to be everything for China. And not just in the US, forget the US. I mean, this happens is globally. The entire world and small companies, China doesn't just sell things that say made in China to the US. I mean, you go to Europe and every dish, coffee mug, whatever, is made in China too. Lots of textiles and things like that. So you need to have a contingency plan, and this is going to have big repercussions in China in the long run. Because they rely, I mean, the whole trade deal, America is the biggest consumer of Chinese products. And that was the whole negotiation between the U.S. and China with Trump and President
Xi Jinping.
Right. To even up the unbalance of the trade with China and the U.S. And then, at the end, they signed up phase 1 of the agreement and all that, and everybody's happy. Well, now that's out the table because now Chinese government is having a bigger issue that is basically shutting down their factories, and they're not producing, manufacturing, or exporting anything for the last 6 to 8 weeks, and who knows how long it's going to happen. They say that they opened the factories again and all that, but it's going to start trickling, and people are going to be much more careful about getting products from China. They are already looking for other plans to export or to import from other countries. So this is going to have a much more longer effect than any trade negotiation that each country may have with China.
Yeah, I think I wrote about this a little bit in my weekly newsletter earlier this week. We'll put a link in the show notes. There's an excellent write-up by a guy named Adam Townsend, and he's a global trade expert, but especially when it comes to China. And he's been talking about how within 5 to 10 years that China was certainly going to have some type of major recession, just because of many things, and it gets a little complicated. I don't want to explain the whole thing on the podcast, but that basically at some point their currency was going to collapse because of how much they manipulate it and how little value it actually has.
That's a whole other topic we're going to get into briefly.
Right, and basically he's saying the coronavirus or COVID-19, whatever, has accelerated what might have happened in 5-10 years to it looks like it's happening right now, because China's whole game was, okay, we have this currency that we completely manipulate and print at will as needed to do whatever we want with, and we're trying to turn our literal fiat fake BS currency into real assets. So they're buying tons of real estate in the US, in Europe, anywhere where you have hard assets. They're the world's largest buyer of gold by far. So they're basically trying to
largest owner,
and oil too.
They're largest owner of real estate and land in the U.S. that is not an American entity is the Chinese.
Yes, I know.
And
they're the biggest buyers of real estate in recent years in the US
absolutely.
And Europe too.
Investment groups. Not just that, but also bigger companies. Few people know that AMC Theaters is owned by a Chinese investment
Marriott.
groups. Marriott Hotels, Starwood before, owned by a Chinese. GE is actually owned by a Chinese investment group. Even though it operates headquarters in the US, the majority stake is actually by another company that is owned in China. Gaming companies. There's a lot of American iconic companies that are actually owned by Chinese investors. And what they do is they bring their, like you said, their devaluated, worthless currency here. They buy something, and then the American seller converts that to dollars because it's perfectly legal. Therefore, you convert the Chinese currency into dollars, and then money is laundered in a legal way, which is something that was part of the deal that Trump was trying to avoid or limit, in the future with the negotiation, that part, and limit how much those Chinese investors could actually bring their money here.
What the Chinese were doing, to give a simple analogy so people understand, is obviously there's a currency conversion rate from the yuan to the dollar, okay? And so they were basically offering, because American real estate sellers are like, I don't want yuans. What do I do with that? Then I have to convert. I don't know what to do with that. So the Chinese were saying, okay, you're selling this. Let's say the property is worth $1 million. Okay, we'll give you 1.3 million worth of yuan, which nobody is going to match that price. And then you can just convert it. And so the American seller is happy and the Chinese are happy because they just turned basically literally shit into gold. Okay?
Monopoly money into real money.
Yes, exactly. That's a better terminology. Shit into gold.
I don't know. You never played
harder.
Monopoly, but I was little.
But what do you mean? I was the Monopoly king. No one ever beat me at Monopoly. Okay.
It's funny. Just a little intersection here. I play Monopoly in like 3 different countries, and it's funny how you have the Monopoly with different neighborhoods and streets from different countries.
Yeah. Boardwalk is always the famous one in America, but I've seen in other countries it's called different things.
Well, they have the streets for each particular
That's
country.
so
Like
funny.
when I played in Spain when I was little, we had all these major avenues from Madrid and all that stuff, and it was pretty cool. And then when I came here, it's like, I don't know any of the streets. I don't know if they're worth this or that or whatever. I knew the ones in Spain, but I didn't know the ones here with Broadway and all that stuff. It's like, anyways, it's funny.
So anyways, yes, China is turning monopoly money into real money. And that was their big plan, okay? Because they know their currency is going to collapse eventually. And that's what happens when you manipulate it to hell. But they said by then it won't matter because we'll have basically laundered it and converted it into so many hard assets that we'll be fine. It looks like that the currency might collapse now because the factories are shut down. There's potential for massive unemployment in China. People are moving their supply chains out of China, so the revenue, GDP growth of China's GDP growth was already slowing. It was down to like 6%, which for them is very slow because they're trying to grow.
More of a 10 plus. Yeah.
And this year, they may have no or even negative GDP growth, which would be an absolute disaster.
Well, for the first
them.
half of the year, for sure. We'll see what happens in the next few weeks or months if things recover. Apparently, it's funny how this virus started in a virus research plant.
Bioweapons research plant.
Well, yeah, exactly. And now they are finding a possible solution to the string to neutralize this virus. So it's still days away, weeks away, but they're finding a solution to their own problem, basically something that they created, which you think, okay, this had research in the virus. This virus somehow escaped the facility, and you would imagine they have a solution for it. But before it happened, because they didn't want to disclose it in the first place, it's already spread all over the world. So it's going to be hard to contain as far as vaccinations and so forth. So anything else about economic repercussions before we switch over to a couple of other topics?
No, I mean, I think we covered most of it. We still don't know what the true economic repercussions will be because especially like in the U.S., we don't know what's going to happen yet. You know, as of right now, there's been no major repercussions in the U.S., but if things get much worse and we start having businesses shut down, restaurants get hurt, retail stores get hurt, that's when you can see
Well, I mean,
major
there's been some,
repercussions.
I mean, you were talking about Amazon also.
Okay, sorry, I forgot about that. So Amazon, and this is kind of rumored, this is a little inside scoop that I was able to get, and that's that Amazon is shutting down a couple FBA centers in Northern California and possibly in Washington State, which is where the majority of the new cases in the U.S. have been, and where there's been deaths in those places. And so they're shutting a few down now. Now, Amazon has hundreds of FBA centers, so this won't affect anything yet. But Amazon is very closely monitoring the situation. If things get worse, don't be surprised if you start seeing FBA centers, which is basically as I wrote this in my newsletter, the lifeblood of Amazon Prime shut down. And the lifeblood of a lot of Amazon sellers who have their products in FBA centers. It's a good idea if you're an Amazon seller to keep backup inventory if you can outside of FBA so that you can have it to self-fulfill orders because it's a small chance. Trust me, Amazon's going to do everything they can to not shut down FBA centers, but sometimes you just can't control it.
Yeah, nobody's too big to avoid the repercussions of this.
Right.
And they're also having an issue.
So if they have mass closures, your products are going to be stuck there. So I would recommend, if you can, obviously I know people can't even get new products from China. It's a whole mess. We talk about the ripple effects. But if you can, try to keep backup inventory outside of FBA centers. So if worse comes to worse and you can't fulfill through FBA, that you can still self-fulfill your inventory. But that's just... So far, there's no big repercussions. You don't have to act yet, but it's something that I recommend anybody who's selling on Amazon to keep a very, very close eye on. We definitely are.
On another point with Amazon, I've also noticed, and I've seen also stories about price gouging and things like that. A lot of sellers are also taking advantage of this situation to, bring up the prices of some products, starting higher demand now from people that are trying to stock up on certain home supplies and things like that. So obviously that's not even legal, and Amazon is tracking that down to make sure that sellers don't take advantage of the situation. Obviously everybody try to make a buck out or something.
Right. I sent you a screenshot the other day because I was looking at masks on Amazon, and the N95 3M masks, which are totally sold out, people were selling them for $400 or $500.
This is something that usually you can buy for 25.
Even
$30.
less. I mean, like a normal 10-pack would be like $20 or something,
right?
And they were selling for $400 or $500,
right? So that's an example of trying to take advantage of the situation. So, all right. So in other news that we have for you, there was something about talking about investments with Robinhood.
Oh yeah,
that you use.
Big deal this week. Robinhood, if for those who don't know, was down for an entire day on Monday. So basically, if you had money in Robinhood, you couldn't invest, you couldn't trade. A lot of people trade options on Robinhood, and their options expired, and it was a big mess.
What did they say the reason was for
I
that?
didn't see a specific reason. There were rumors that because of leap day that their system got screwed up. That was just a rumor. I don't know exactly what the cause was, but basically it was a big fuck up. And now there's already people of course are very reactive. There's already a class action lawsuit being created against Robinhood. And I definitely think this is going to hurt Robinhood's rep. I mean, a lot of people were saying, as soon as this goes up, I'm pulling all my money out of Robinhood, especially because you have E-Trade and all these other platforms now offering the same levels
free
of service.
Trades, right. Yeah. I mean, Robinhood's advantage back when they started is that they offer free trades, which the other platforms like back in the day, Scottrade, and then it was acquired by TD Ameritrade and Schwab and everything, they had like $7 a trade or something. So there's always a fee that people didn't like to pay because, especially you're a small investor and you buy $100 worth of stock, you pay a $7 fee. That means that the stock needs to go up 7%, which is quite a bit, just to make up the fee, and then you start making money.
Keep in mind, Robinhood's core audience or customer base is people in their 20s and 30s,
right? Very young people
who aren't making major investments. They just want to buy, because they even do now. I don't know if you knew this. They have fractional shares.
Right.
So Amazon that costs $2,000 a share, you can buy a tenth of Amazon.
Right.
So they have their target audience, and this kind of gets, that we'll see. It went down for a day. It's back up. I definitely think that hurts their brand trust for sure. But I wanted to ask you about what you thought, and I'll give my thoughts too, on the bigger plans for Robinhood. And do you think that they're going to make it and be a big
I already said this Schwab
type company?
No, I don't think so. I like you said, after Schwab was the first one we came with the no fee for trades, and then TD Ameritrade had no chance but to match it. Full disclosure, I use TD Ameritrade for my own investments, but which is great now is you basically can buy and sell stocks with no fees, which is great. But once these two major platforms and stock management companies offer free trades, then Robinhood doesn't have any advantage. Basically, they're a smaller platform. They are more subject to glitches like this, and then they offer no advantage to the investor. So I actually think that
offer
that's what happened to Scottrade.
But
Scottrade has basically the Easy Trade platform and everything, and eventually they were absorbed or bought out by TD Ameritrade. So I think Robinhood will eventually do the same. They'll have to sell or they'll be bought out by one of the major ones, and they will just disappear. They will be transferred over all the clients and the assets and everything, and then they will disappear because I don't know how they make money, really.
Well, they don't. That's the thing.
Right, exactly.
Well,
that's my point.
They do, but they're not profitable, basically.
Right.
Their whole advantage of the platform was, again, they were the first to have no fees, but now everyone matched that. Now they started offering fractional shares. They started offering leverage. That's how they make most of their money now, is offering leverage. They introduced easy options trading, and they're basically their whole strategy was. And I've listened to interviews with the founders.
And they make money with the actual trades too from the trading platforms themselves. And obviously, if people are holding their money there on a margin account or something, then they also make money on the interest and all that. So there's other ways to make money, but they don't make enough money to compensate all the.
Well, I've listened to interviews with the founder in the past. And basically, the whole strategy was, okay, there's no platform built for young people. We're going to build that platform. And our goal is to get all the people in their 20s and 30s to invest with us instead of E-Trade or any other platform. And it worked well as far as getting a lot of users. But if you look at the business model of Charles Schwab, for example, really, they don't make any money on the bottom 95% of users. Their whole game, the whole game of any of these platforms is, we want to get millions of customers, and then we know that 90% of them where they're going to lose money or break even, but on the top 5-10%, we're going to have all these upsell services, and basically the people with a lot of money, and we're going to make a lot of fees on them. But Robinhood doesn't have that many people with a lot of money because there's not that many 20 and 30-year-olds with a ton of money.
Don't forget that the bigger platforms also have upgrades to paid subscriptions too, where you can...
Right, Robinhood does too. But the other way so Robinhood doesn't have the ultra wealthy people on their platform that they can get a bunch of fees from. Like Charles Schwab has lots of, they say, okay, we want someone to start investing in our platform in their 40s. So by the time they're in their 60s and they have a ton of money, we're going to make a bunch with them. So Robinhood is kind of doing the same thing, but they're probably still 10 years out from actually making a lot of money. And so they need to survive another 10 years. The other thing that I think is going to be their downfall, that I think is insane, is that they're offering ridiculous amounts of leverage for options trading, day trading, all these things that are incredibly difficult for high-level hedge funds, algo traders. These people do this all day, and it's incredibly difficult to get a return. And you got college students, and they're giving them leverage. I'm
surprised they're doing that, because most of the major platforms, more reputable ones, if that's the word, like for example, TD Ameritrade only allows you to do I think 3 round trips per day, meaning that you buy and sell the same stock 2 or 3 times. That's basically a day trader that is trying to buy at 50 and sell at 40 and then buy again and then try to make a profit here and there. Especially now that there's no fees, that actually has become much more attractive, because before you had to wait quite a bit before you compensate for the fees. But they only allow you a certain number of round trips, buy and sell the same stock. And even if you are a, legit investor, basically, with enough, money in your portfolio. So I'm very surprised that Robinhood is doing that with...
I think their ads are predatory too. I don't know if you knew this. They're the biggest advertiser on TikTok, which is obviously all teenagers, audience. Basically.
Yeah, which, by the way, goes to China.
Yeah, and they're the biggest advertiser on TikTok, so they obviously know what they're doing. They're not fools. They know that most of the people on there, first of all, aren't even old enough to trade yet, but they're also trying to get all the college students. So they get college students. Options trading is very difficult, very complex, and they're getting people, and especially kids, who don't know what they're doing, and then they're giving them leverage. But the difference is they don't have any collateral. So if the kid loses, if they give somebody $4,000 in leverage and then they lose it, they don't have any collateral. So they can just default on that. I think the leverage is what's going to be the downfall of Robinhood, because I think it's just, I don't know. We'll see. But I think, like you said, they're either going to be acquired or they're just going to shut down. I
don't think they will shut down, because they have a pretty wealthy database, which is very attractive. That age demographic.
Yeah, but I don't mean shut down. I mean they're going to go out of business and sell for pennies on the dollar, basically.
Yeah, I mean, some of the money is insured, but I think they will sell or merge for a very beneficial terms for the company that is acquiring them. But maybe they're already talking about that stuff, maybe not. I don't know. But that's my guess. But we'll see.
They're planning on going public within the next few years.
Obviously, because they don't have money, but... It's tough.
If I was an employee in Robinhood, I would be looking to cash out as soon as I could. Yeah. That's for sure.
All right. What else do we have in the news? Spotify.
Spotify has their new voice assistant.
Is it ready? I know I heard about that.
It's coming. I don't know how soon it's going to come. Basically, you say, "Hey, Spotify," just like you would have thought. The reason I want to talk about
how do you do that? I mean, you do it through your mobile.
Yeah.
I mean, you need to activate another... Because, I mean, right now you go say, hey, Siri, whatever, and then you say, play something on Spotify, or I can say, Alexa play something on Spotify. So how does that go directly to Spotify? Do you need to have it on? Or?
I assume you have to just give it access to your microphone and then it works. I don't know the details, but basically they're creating their own voice assistant. The reason I think this is interesting though is because obviously Spotify is very much trying to own audio and voice, and they're another competitor in it, but the unique advantage that they have over like Amazon and Google in terms of voice is that they have this huge content library, audio content library. And I thought it was really interesting that they're getting into this. I thought it was a smart move too, actually, because I think that they want to own, if you're going to do anything with audio, you think Spotify. I think that's what their goal is. That anything, podcasts, audiobooks, music, obviously, and voice commands, they want all of that to be in Spotify. And I think that's their... I think it's actually really interesting. We'll see how much the adoption rate is of this voice service, but I thought it was really interesting. What do you think?
Well, I think so too, but I also think that the existing ones with Google Assistant and Siri and Alexa, I'm looking because we have one there. They haven't really grown as much as we thought. I was a big advocate of voice marketing, and it still is there.
Yeah,
but I don't think it's been like widespread I mean, people use it for music and everything, but they don't use it for like Amazon, maybe it's listening and all that stuff that they say, but they don't use it for saying like something, hey, order a toothpaste for me, or do this or do that, things like that.
Some people do, but what I was going to say is I think people overhyped it too. There's advantages of a screen, and the biggest thing that a screen has versus voice that I didn't understand why people were overhyping voice. I think voice still has a ton of room to grow, but that this idea that it's just going to replace screens, I thought was absurd.
Yeah, I didn't think it was that.
And because I'll give you a perfect example, like you just said, buy toothpaste. Okay, which toothpaste? The difference of a screen is that you can look through and see the options of it, okay? And humans are very visual creatures, okay? We like to see things. And so if you just say buy toothpaste, then what is it going to do? Just read you the description of 15 toothpaste? So
yeah,
that was the thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's more for recurring purchases.
Yes,
like
for
you
that
bought
I
something
understand.
before, you can reorder something that I purchased before.
Right.
But sometimes, even when I ask my Alexa tool to basically tell me what orders are coming, I just want to know what is coming and when, and then I have like a 3-minute dissertation with the title, description, pricing, blah 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 blah. It's like too much, It's like, you have this order coming today, blah blah blah.
That's another perfect example of, I think people way underestimated that it's so much faster to read something than to listen to an assistant, especially because the assistants are not smart enough yet to summarize things for you.
Right.
Where it's like, oh yeah, your toothpaste is coming today.
Exactly.
At 4. That's all I need. I don't need to know Crest toothpaste, 8-ounce bottle or whatever.
Great for your teeth and gums and this, and especially the recommended for this and that is coming. It's like, okay, I got it. Just won't tell me, Anyway, so that's. But Spotify is different. Obviously, they don't sell any particular merchandise so far. They just basically allow you to.
They will.
Yeah,
I think that's a big.
Well,
play.
yeah, they will, and I will tell you that I was surprised that the Spotify is not getting also into videos in the future, becoming another streaming platform because they have all the database.
I don't know that they're going to go for video because that's not their core strength. They want to be the audio company. There's a million video companies, but really they're the only major audio platform.
But that, again, is the same thing about keeping people within your ecosystem. So if I'm listening to, let's say we were talking about the Bill Simmons now, where he's basically The Ringer, just bought out by Spotify, and you sometimes watch The Ringer or some of the podcasts like Rewatchables and things like that.
Right,
video.
but I go to, you can't be everything.
No, I understand, but I don't think it'll be too hard for them to basically say you're watching The Ringer or you're watching the Rewatchables, this podcast.
But you listen to The Ringer.
Well, you listened to the podcast, but some of them are visual, as you know.
Well, yeah, some do visuals. And I think they will.
Like
they're exploring with music videos and stuff, but I definitely don't think that they're going to try to be a streaming service for video. I definitely don't think they're going to do that. I wouldn't think they should do that.
What about for podcasts that are simulcast on audio and video?
That would be okay.
Okay, well then
that would be okay. But
right.
as far as, but it's still audio.
Like
focused.
why would people
like this podcast? Basically.
Like this one, for example, we put it on Spotify, but then the video version goes to YouTube in addition to other places, but it's hosted by YouTube. So why would I go to Spotify in the future if I want to listen to this, but then when I want to watch it, I need to go to YouTube? Might as well Spotify just say, hey, upload the video here, and we have the option to let people listen or watch.
That's fine. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm saying as far as
and then they can put much more advertising there too.
Would they create video shows or
no? I don't think they create their own content.
If you're saying to augment and improve the audio with visual additions,
right?
Yes, but video by itself, no, that's not their strength.
No, they're not going to create their own
competition
content like all the major production companies are creating. But adding video to their audio component,
yes, that I would agree with.
I think it's a natural
That's
thing.
the distinction I would make. Video to enhance the audio, not video in just by itself because it's a video.
Right.
That's what I would say.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm talking about. I think they are basically. I mean, if I were Spotify, I'll say okay, that's the natural thing because majority of the larger podcasts. I mean, we're obviously a very small one, but we do this on video and we edit it, we post it on YouTube, and then it goes to a majority of platforms. Obviously, and all the audio platforms for podcasting, but they also go, once you have the video on YouTube, you can add it to a majority of websites and things that we have. So if I'm Spotify, I'm trying to keep all these major podcasts, like we said, the Ringer podcast and all that stuff, all the ones that have a video component to say, hey, keep it with us. Don't just go and watch it on YouTube, because I'm sure they will not be happy. If I'm paying
I totally get
$250 million for the Ringer, and then they have the rewatchables, and then people go to YouTube to watch it, it's like, why did I pay that money?
I definitely see what you're saying. I'm not disagreeing with you. Right. I thought you were saying that they would try to compete with Netflix or something streaming service.
No, I don't think they're going to do that.
Okay.
So.
No, but I do think that Spotify, I'm really interested in Spotify. I actually think that, now, the big play that I think could, this is total speculation, the ultimate big play would be if Netflix and Spotify merged. I think that would be a power player in the digital content space, because Netflix would have all the original video content, Spotify would all the original audio content, music, podcasts, video podcasts, all of that. And then if you want original video content, you have Netflix. That would be a monster player. And like I said, the commerce opportunities are massive for both.
Yeah, I mean, if they were to merge with any of these major companies that are in the streaming video arena, I think obviously they're not going to do it with Apple unless Apple buys them, but Apple has already their own platforms and content distribution. Google is similar. Obviously, Amazon has their own Prime and content and everything else. So yeah, I think Netflix will make more sense, but I don't know if Spotify is interested in merging as much as growing and adding value. They're in a shopping spree lately, for sure.
I think they can add value to each other, though.
Yes, they could. I just don't know if Netflix is so much into the audio part.
I think Netflix is into the owning content consumption, and Netflix has no audio. And that's the biggest hole that they have. And if they were to acquire Spotify, then that would fill that hole.
For that reason, Amazon that I know of, they don't have any audio either.
Well, they have Amazon Prime Music. But
yeah, okay, music. Yeah.
But Amazon isn't doing it as their... Amazon's core business is not streaming. That's an augmentation. That's an add-on feature to get you to subscribe to Prime so that you buy more stuff on Amazon.com. Netflix's core business is you are paying for the content. Because even Disney is a good example, where Disney has Disney Plus, but Disney also has a ton of podcasts. They have ESPN podcasts. They have all these companies that they own where they do podcasts. So they have audio. Mm-hmm. And I think that Disney will probably do some type of audio service as well in the future, whether it's integrated with Disney Plus or separate, I don't know. I don't think it would be separate, honestly. But I think within the ESPN app, there already are podcasts.
Yeah, most of the ESPN sports shows are basically simulcast into a podcast.
I think that Disney Plus, I wouldn't be surprised if they have their own audio section of Disney Plus in the future. But Netflix, definitely, I don't think Netflix is going to get into the podcast business. But I think them acquiring Spotify would be massive, because the difference in streaming is that there's a lot of players, but in audio, they're really, even Apple Music, Apple has totally dropped the ball on podcasting. They had the chance to own the space, and they've totally dropped the ball.
I was just listening to another podcast that were talking specifically about that, and I don't know if they dropped the ball or they purposely didn't want to get into that.
I think because it was too small for them.
No, but they
didn't care enough.
They're smart enough to know how it's grown.
But even now, like I forget the numbers, but total podcast revenue is only like a little over $1 billion.
Yeah, but look at all the data that they get from the users and the downloads and everything else. They can tell pretty much what kind of things I like just by the podcast that I listen to.
Yeah,
because they're basically just an aggregator. I mean, all they do is they don't host the podcast. They just stream it from the sources. So
but the problem
when
with
they know my user ID and everything when I'm logging in, I want to subscribe to a podcast and then I listen to this and that. So I think that data is where it's valuable to them, as opposed to trying to monetize the actual podcast like Spotify does. And on Spotify, as you know, because they monetize and they advertise into the podcast when people are not Spotify members or subscribers, then some podcasters don't like that, as we know very well, Joe Rogan and some other major players. So I think Apple wants to keep their podcast as is and then just benefit from the database of users that they have.
But the thing is that I think a lot of, as there's so many podcast players out there now that are just better than the Apple podcast player, including Spotify's. As Apple starts to lose users on their podcast, they're not going to have that data anymore. That's what I'm saying.
You think they will lose users?
Yeah, I think so. I think the Apple podcast platform is so bad, it's not even funny.
I don't think it's bad. But it's just not very functional. They've actually...
Yeah, not functional. Bad. It's so bad.
It's bad for searches and things like that.
It's bad if you want to listen to any podcast that's not one of the top 100 podcasts in the world. It is terrible, basically. There's no discoverability. The only discovered is from big media companies.
But I mean, how is that different from Spotify?
Spotify has discovery algorithms. Why do we post this on YouTube, and why do so many podcasters post on YouTube? For those who don't know, it's not just because we want to be on camera. It's because YouTube has an algorithm that recommends things, so you can have your videos recommended. That's why YouTubers do it. Why do you think every podcaster does clips? Because the clips get in the algorithm. YouTube has that. Mm-hmm. Apple has no algorithm, no recommendations, nothing. Spotify
So you need to search for something.
Yes, you have to already know about it. But if obviously you don't know about the podcast, you can't search for it.
No, it's definitely not a good search-friendly platform, because even when you know, like I've been searching for a particular guest that I know is on a podcast, but I don't know the name of the podcast, and I put the name, and all of a sudden I see all these different podcasts that the person has been to and all that stuff. It's just not very friendly for sure. So, all right. I think... do you have any other topics that you like to? We're talking about Twitter.
I don't have too much to say about Twitter. For those who don't know, Jack Dorsey is maybe going to be ousted by Elliott Management, which is it's a firm that's very famous for doing hostile takeovers and ousting the executive team, and they're trying to do that at Twitter right now. I hope they don't. I think that Twitter, the argument against Twitter is that, basically the stock's been flat for like 5 years. But the stock was incredibly overvalued 5 years ago. It was valued at hundreds of times its earnings. And that's not the fault of Jack Dorsey. He can't control the valuation. Twitter's earnings have been going up consistently year over year. The user retention has never been higher. People are using Twitter a lot.
But they're not growing as fast as other platforms as far as daily active users.
They're not growing they're not growing that much as far as new users. But of their existing users, the usage has gone up a lot. As in, those people are spending a ton of time on Twitter. I'll admit it myself. I'm not
much of a Twitter user. I know you are, but I do know that the users that they have are very loyal. They go there for their news, basically, more than they go to any other source. And the advertising on Twitter is not something that is very appealing to me as far as how it displays or anything because of the limitations of the platform. But apparently, it's beneficial. Companies actually do advertise.
It's gotten a lot better. It's
Right.
they still definitely have room to improve, but it's gotten a lot better. The thing that they lack more is just the targeting rather than the ads themselves, I would say. But it's gotten a lot better, and like I said, the company is profitable and growing profitably, which in a world of tech companies where they just burn cash, I think that's a really good job. And especially when you look at, part of it is the profitability, but the other part is look at the social and cultural prominence that Twitter has. Is there really any platform, maybe other than Instagram, that has the prominence that Twitter has?
Yeah.
I mean, every head of state in the world uses Twitter to talk to people. Every CEO uses Twitter to talk to people.
Become like the new way of form press releases for any major
Twitter
agency.
killed the press release, basically.
Yeah. Basically, all the online press releases, they just make a press release themselves on Twitter, and then that's the way to communicate with the rest of the world. And it's actually true because you don't want to be misquoted or anything, so you put your own tweet out there, which now is easier. That is more like 280 characters, so you have a little more room to play. You can put 1, 2, 3, 4s, and then it's just basically your voice right there. So,
and not to mention, and I actually tweeted this yesterday in defense of Jack. Jack is a incredibly rare founder that has created not one but two multi-billion-dollar public companies, the other being Square.
Well, but that's the one of the challenges they have, that he's co-CEOing two companies that require major attention, and that's not something that you can juggle that easily.
Most people can't. I think Jack can, because the job of a CEO is to ultimately be the person who drives the ship and has the long-term vision and strategic vision. And I think Jack has shown that in both Twitter and Square, he really has a firm grasp of a vision for the future. And I think the biggest argument is that he is way more qualified than any stupid CEO that Elliott management is going to put in, because they're going to put in some corporate raider who's just going to try to cut expenses as much as possible, lay off a quarter of the people there, cut expenses, say we don't need growth, but we're going to increase profits, we're going to ruin the platform. No, I think Jack Dorsey is the right guy, even if he's not always focused purely on the short-term profits, which is what shareholders want. Right. He is more focused on the long-term vision of saying, I run two of the most, revolutionary companies of the last decade, and I'm going to continue my vision.
And now with election year and all that stuff is when Twitter, every time there's a major event, I mean, this year we have different ones hopefully happening, like Olympics, European Soccer Cup. Then we have obviously elections at the end of the year in the US. So those are things that Twitter excels at, because you have instant news and all that. So hopefully, I like Twitter. I don't use it that much as you know, but I do like it. I mean, I like it that it's there and I can go quickly. When I want some news and I see something is trending, I go to Twitter and I actually find out what's going on. Like, you can monitor your feeds and everything else. It's completely different than anything else. I mean, if I were to choose two platforms for myself, the first one that I use most is Instagram, just because I'm more visual and it's kind of more relaxing. And then Twitter for news, but obviously Facebook and anything else, I mean, I don't really use much, other than YouTube, just to watch videos and things like that. So.
And I think one last note, I think the long-term play for Jack, and this is total speculation, but if I were him, I would be looking at the synergies between Twitter and Square, the two companies I run, because I think that as we always talk about, media and commerce are colliding, and he owns really one of the largest media companies in the world, media platforms in the world, and one of the largest payment platforms in the world. And I think that in the future, they will not necessarily merge as in a literal merger, but that there will be a lot of crossover in the capabilities. And so that's why I think Jack is the best guy to run the company. Plus, he founded it. It wouldn't exist if it weren't for him.
Well, yeah, obviously, he founded it. He was let go.
And look at the history of companies who get rid of their founders and how well that turns out in tech.
Yeah, and then they came back. Yeah. All right, to be continued. Hopefully, this does it for today. Hopefully next week we have better news or different news about coronavirus and everything. We think we'll start maybe going down.
I don't think so.
All right, well, let's be optimistic.
Stay
and think
safe.
That,
wash your hands.
Thanks for
Don't pick your
listening
nose.
or watching. If you like to watch the video instead of the podcast, you're listening now, you can find us on YouTube under MGR Consulting. Is that
Agency.
MGR Agency on YouTube? Okay, and then if you listen to the podcast, you know where to find us. Just we're talking about Apple Podcast or Spotify or any other podcast platform. Remember, this podcast is brought to you by MGR Agency, which is our mothership agency. We do all kinds of digital marketing and advertising for major companies and small ones too, and that's what we like to do. So if you have any questions or anything, you can contact us. David also sends an email every week, specifically for e-commerce with very breaking news, really, because we have actually contacts in major platforms, including Amazon and all that, and we can find out things or know about things before they happen. So if you have any issues or anything, and specifically you are in the e-commerce arena, whether it's with Amazon stores or Shopify or any other platform, be sure to contact us. I mean, we offer you a free half-hour consultation to just let you know what we think, and then you can decide whether to use our services or just go on your own. So that's it for me. Anything, David?
Subscribe to the newsletter at mgredge.com/join.
All right, very good. We'll see you guys next week. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.